Hello and welcome to the Bluff Creek Project podcast. I'm Tate Hieronymus. I am your host for tonight. And I thought I would have uh, this guy on, kind of a cool cat. His name is Ron Man Reed. Um, he joins me on a lot of my expeditions, and I join him on his expeditions. So without further ado, I'm just going to be done rambling. Ron, what's up?
How you doing?
Oh, I'm just chilling like a villain.
You're in Florida, right?
Don't even talk about that. But yes, I'm just, I'm just kidding. No, I'm in Florida.
And I'm in Wisconsin. I think we've probably got different weather going on right now, don't we?
Yeah, it was funny because when I texted you, I was literally getting out of the hot tub. I was like overheated, and I was gonna pass out if I didn't get out, and it was brutal down here.
Sorry, I'm just pouring.
I
Oh,
was,
uh,
oh,
too much, too much. That's okay. I like my sleeping bag to smell like whiskey. Sorry, I'm pouring a drink here and was ignoring whatever you were just saying. It's still I, all right. It's still dripping all over the place.
oh,
Sorry, I gotta get lubed up before I do this interview. I'm so nervous to talking to this guy that I talk to all the time.
you gotta quit with these euphemisms. That they don't mean what you think they mean.
What did I say? What did I just say?
Okay, on Alex's show, you're like, "Oh, we were there the busiest time of the year. Everybody wants to hit the water and beat off the summer heat," and now you're like, "I gotta get lubed up."
I'm pretty sure people say that when they're talking about drinking.
I've never heard it.
Oh, well, maybe only drunk people say that, but it's early for me.
I, Maybe not.
Hey, it smells more like mango than alcohol, so it's a mango habanero whiskey by Old Smoky.
Does it burn even more?
I feel like there's a little bit of a heat after it that's there for sure.
Dang, dude, you got to bring that up to Bluff Creek this year.
If I can find another bottle, yeah, I'll have to go back up there next week and before it's taken off the shelf. It's a good one. It's not bad.
Are you
It's not
drinking?
super.
Are you drinking Propel?
That too, yeah.
Kiwi?
Mm, no, lemon.
Oh, lemon.
Yeah.
The kiwi one's pretty good.
Right now I'm all sticky. Sorry if that just continues the trend, huh?
I
Um, so what are we talking about? Are we talking about Bigfoot or
don't know. I mean, this is just a casual this is a I did that on purpose. This is a casual conversation
Oh, okay. All right. Okay. All right.
about about this is a Bigfoot podcast. No, I'm just kidding. No, so you've been joining me on some trips. You've been doing some things yourself. You were with Small Town Monsters in Alaska.
Mm-hmm.
Let's start with that. What was that experience like going up to Alaska? Because that's a place I've always been wanting to go to.
I had to like go back in time a little bit and think about my interest as a youth, and kind of when I got into Bigfoot, how I got into Bigfoot, and at that same time, as I was kind of getting familiar with cryptozoology, I was also kind of motivated to learn about bushcraft, outdoor survival, like wilderness. I always growed up like I grew up with a lot of interest in nature and wildlife, and Alaska was that place that was always so far away, like they call it the last frontier. And I think before I even was really obsessed with Bigfoot, which has been going on for, gosh, dude, like almost 2 decades now, I was equally as interested in going to Alaska. Like when I was a kid, I was probably like in 7th grade, and I was like, I'm gonna learn all these survival skills, and then I'm gonna start walking across the American landscape to go to Alaska, which is like a ridiculous like proposal, like you'd have to.
It's a Christopher McCandless proposal.
Yeah, yeah, and I mean, and he was a huge inspiration for me. Um, as I got older, that movie came out while I was like had these ideas of like surviving in Alaska, and before there were 47 shows on the History Channel, Discovery Network, and any other network TV on surviving in Alaska, like I wanted to be that guy, like, and I think the two interests like kind of came full circle, and there I was looking for Bigfoot in the state of Alaska, finally getting to witness like that that rugged wilderness and everything. So that was pretty cool to finally make it that far. And working with Alex and Eli is always a treat. Those guys are pretty cool. Um, but yeah, I don't know. It was awesome. I could never really imagine it happening, and then one day there it was. I got the call on the phone. I was at work. I could have ignored it, like I do most calls when I'm on the job, and
Like my
and uh,
like my calls.
yeah, sometimes, yeah. But I just happened to like be like, what the heck does Alex Petikoff want? And he's like, dude, this is extremely short notice, but do you think you can come to Alaska in 2 weeks? I'm like, ooh, 2 weeks. Um, but yeah, I put my job on the line and everything to get a personal leave approved for it. And I was actually on the plane when they finally approved the leave.
Oh
I
man.
Yeah, and I was like, oh, well, that's cool. I get to come back to a job. But it was one of those opportunities that comes once in a lifetime. It's like, yeah, I'm gonna go and check out this cabin property in remote Alaska where some squatchy things have been happening, and man, it was awesome. It was awesome, and hopefully, hopefully I could get to return this year.
Now
Um,
it's funny. I also got that invite, but I couldn't make it. And so, I mean, I'm still invited to go when those guys go or when you go, I'm sure.
yeah.
But I've never been there, and that's a bucket place that I want to go to. So, being there, was it kind of everything you were thinking it was going to be, or were you were you a little bit let down in some way? Like, what was your initial thought when you actually
So
got there?
so the thing about that property is there's so much that comes from there in that surrounding area. It's not far from where Les Stroud had his Survivor Man Bigfoot encounter that launched the Survivor Man Bigfoot series. The thing that got him kind of interested in it, that was somewhere on a nearby beach, I think.
Yeah, I believe so. It wasn't terribly far.
Yeah. And then the audio clips that kind of came from Scott were just really good audio clips. It was cool um to hear those sounds. Like most of the time, I go through a catalog. I'm one of those Bigfoot researchers that like I get so burnt out on looking into research and other people's findings because I have so much of a background in like nature and biology, like that I can dismiss so much of it, and so much of the Bigfoot stuff is crap. I have low tolerance for like Facebook pages that are nothing but pareidolia and stuff like that. And so the thing about what was coming from that property was those audio clips were not owls. They were not barred owls or red fox or anything like that. These were sounds that sounded unusual, primate in nature and not something that could easily be replicated by people. Um, and some researchers went there and were amazed by some of it, and then other researchers were, we were hearing some of the stuff like people were claiming they were hoaxing with Sierra sounds and stuff, but none of those audio recordings. I have both of the Sierra sounds recordings, and basically the entire collection of what's publicly available. None of those are pre-recorded sounds. So just the audio that came out of that area was really cool. The track that they ended up finding later was cool. I think it was everything I could have asked for and more, just like in a general Alaskan sense, but then also the potential of that area. Like and as much as I credit Alex and Eli for their solid productions, like some of the conversations that we had off camera, and some of the things we observed off camera, like it doesn't make it into part 1 or part 2 of those Bigfoot Beyond the Trail episodes. Like there was more, and hopefully when I start creating more of my content, because I was filming too, and hopefully I can shed a little more light on that property. I was with Scott alone, and he did a call, and Scott's not a Bigfooter. He had kind of an interesting call that he did. And but he got a response, and it was across the cove, and we just unloaded the boat. There was no way that like anybody was setting us up for a prank or a hoax or anything like that. But I just remember hearing this like angry yell, roar from across the cove, and that, like, no one ever discussed that. Like that was just something that happened between me and Scott, and
And
he looked up at me.
nobody heard this besides you two?
Yeah, like Alex, I think, was out in the field, but like he missed out on it or something, like he was doing something else. He was in mid conversation with somebody. It's kind of like, we have this happen all the time. Well, somebody will hear a whoop while 4 different conversations are happening in camp, and it's only 1 out of 8 people that will hear it. But yeah, like Scott and I, we were off a little from the rest of the people kind of filing out, like just at the just beyond the cabin, and we heard a vocal, man, and I knew I screwed up because none of us thought that something was going to happen so early. This was maybe within first hour or 2 hours we were there, and nobody was recording audio.
Now, how has that affected the way you are going to go about research in the future? Because I know for a lot of people that kind of thing happens, and then they're like, moving forward, I'm just going to start recording everything, no matter what. That way, if that does happen, I'll get it.
Yeah. So it's been a process for me. I was just thinking about this the other day. Been a process for me in capturing audio, and I think it started in Falk, right? I went out with a recorder, and I was researching an area with some people that I met kind of outside town at a campground, and we went over to Mercer Bayou, and I had my audio like back at the car, right? I had an audio recording device, and I just thought, oh well, I'll just walk back like and grab the recorder if something starts to happen. But then I didn't want to miss out on what was happening. So later, as we drifted away from the cars, we started hearing wood knocks, and they were coming towards us, and nobody recorded it. Nobody had audio recording, and my recorder was just sitting back there at the car. And so that was my first lesson in audio recording: is if you have an audio recorder, it stays on you, And then later, this was the Alaska area was an episode, or kind of a lesson in and of itself, was have not only just have the audio on you, but record it, start recording. If anybody does any wood knocks, if anybody does any calls, and you're anticipating, even if it's a 1% chance, if you're anticipating a response of any kind, you better already have it on record, because I've learned that you will hear a single vocalization, and then it will go silent, and then there will be nothing else, not just for the night, but for a week. That might be your one and only chance. Don't blow it. And then shortly after Alaska, when we were in Bluff Creek, I realized if you're going to be recording audio, it's cool to leave audio somewhere recording, but if you're going to venture outside of that area, you better have another device to capture it. So, we had some sounds along the Go Road in Bluff Creek, and yeah, I had two recorders, and I just chose not to use the second one that night. It was back at camp, and it should have been in my pocket so that we could have recorded and played back those whoops. But yeah, no, Alaska was kind of that wake up call. Like, okay, if you're doing research, keep the audio rolling. If you have enough battery and storage, even if you're just there in an area that has potential, you just should keep that audio rolling then, even if you're not doing knocks and trying to initiate a response, just keep that audio rolling.
Yeah. And then I'll mention this, here shortly, but this will kind of go in touch with what I'm going to talk about. But in Alaska, was it on the side of the shed you guys saw what some of the group were saying is a handprint and some were saying no? And what was your thoughts on this potential handprint marking on this shed? Because like I know we're in a private chat with each other, and we sometimes disagree on things, but we still get along at the end of the day. But in your personal opinion, what do you think that was, and did you ever make that clear off camera or on camera?
Um, I think off camera, I was pretty convinced that it was more than likely human. Um, it was one of those situations. So there's the water collection. I think that was behind there. There was some type of different, like there were some different things on the backside of the cabin that may or may not need some maintenance or attention. The other thing about it is I believe on the backside of that cabin, there's a little bit of the roof overhangs a little bit. So whatever was there, if as long as there wasn't rain or wind, high winds, and causing the rain to slant in the right direction, um, the siding of that cabin was protected from the elements, right? So we did have a hand there. It was obvious that something or someone put a hand there, but it wasn't necessarily like beyond the range of a human hand. And Scott gets so many visitors, and somebody could have gone off to the back of the cabin and leaned over it to embrace themselves up to take a leak or something like that. You could have had somebody come down from that steep ridge and like lean against the cabin momentarily. It's just a few different situations to where somebody could have planted a hand there, and nobody's doing constant surveillance on the backside of the cabin. So it was one of those situations where somebody might have put their hand there in the past few months, or even during our duration there, and then just had that lapse of like memory where, oh yeah, I was back there, and I was um looking at checking the underneath the cabin to see if there's any erosion, or if it's structurally sound or something like that. It could have been anything. It could have been the owner of the cabin. It could have been one of his guests. It could have been anything like that. So it never really, it was one of those situations where it would have been awesome if it was Bigfoot, because it was right underneath the window in the room where we were sleeping. So the idea of something coming in and placing its hand there and peering in at the newcomers into its territory, it was a really alluring thought. But I just don't, there's nothing about that where I could sway one way or the other towards whether it was a human or something not human. The thing that I found interesting was what we found when we were investigating and tried to recreate the thermal that was captured just shortly before we arrived. The last time Scott was at his cabin, he had some different friends there, and one of them captured on a thermal a little bit of video of just like a heat signature, and it's just a line. It's not really anything striking about it. Um, but they flagged off that area, and we went up that ridge, and nobody had been up there prior. And then on that fallen tree were these depressions, and it looked like something big had sat there, because you had like what seemed to be a left depression and a right depression, which kind of looked like a left cheek and a right cheek of something sitting its big butt on this tree. And then at the bottom of it was kind of like you could see where feet had kind of kicked up the leaves and vegetation.
Weird.
And that was that was kind of an interesting thing for me. We kind of scanned that area, the surface of that area, to see if there were any hairs or anything, and there wasn't anything left behind. But when we started to sit in there to try and recreate the thermal, like I only occupied half of that space, so like I could fit in one half of the depression there. Um, so whatever was there, if it was just a single individual, it was huge. And yeah, we tried the recreation and we couldn't really get much from comparing the thermal that was taken and in our recreation, but it was still kind of interesting. I felt like that was what caught my attention on the property. That and the vocalization I heard, and then the knocks that we were recording, and what sounded like rocks being chucked into the ocean. So it was a little bit of this and that, and then what we discovered, and ultimately like what was already presented in the past. The audio recordings and stuff are really kind of striking to me. So I don't know, man. Alaska had a lot going on, and it's not like that had to take place over a huge wilderness area. Like that was just Scott's backyard, essentially, you know. Um, and then that terrain just stretches further back and back. We really just scratched the surface on that area. But it was interesting. It was, can't say everything was unverifiably Bigfoot, but um, it started to paint a picture that it's an area of interest for sure.
Oh man. Like I saw some of the footage, and then watching, the Beyond the Trail episode of those two episodes, it looks like amazing and beautiful country. And like I wish I can get there. And before I move on, the last thing I want to ask you about it is, no doubt you guys were really far out there. It's in the middle of nowhere. Yeah, it's an hour boat ride from the nearest town. But did you get the sense that it was like in the middle of nowhere, or did you have that false sense that you weren't in the middle of nowhere because you had the boat and a cabin? Kind of as that, like that weird thing, like, oh, we're civilization's right here because it's a cabin. It's a known structure.
There were daily reminders that we were in the wilderness. So yeah, it's a nice cabin. They did a great job building it. But when you have to go and get your fresh water from a stream, that's a reminder that you're in the wilderness. When you have to split the firewood, to keep the dwelling warm, that's a reminder that you're in the wilderness. There there was a cabin there, but then, as we explored that area, we came across other cabins that were in this area. It used to be kind of a civilized area. That had it was I think there was a logging camp or something there. I think there was even a school at one time. It was a little bit of a community, but the potential for that area, its potential for its economy kind of dried up, and then everybody left. Um, but you kind of see the landscape take things back, and so we came across a cabin, and we looked in there, and it looked like nobody had been in there for 5 years. The structure was maintained, and it was like it was still structurally sound, but when we looked inside, you could tell there wasn't any recent activity. um So there are houses out there that people don't go to, but once every 5 years or something,
Right.
um, which is kind of weird. Um, it seems empty. It seems like there were people there, and then they left. Their hearts were pounding for more civilization, more accessibility to their daily lives, like, and you just kind of it seems almost like post-apocalyptic, like it's um but then beyond those dwellings too, like it's just it's rugged. You're looking out the front door of that cabin. You look out and you see um the cove, and there's probably some type of animal, more than likely a sea otter or sea lions, kind of swimming in and out of the cove. You might look out further into the bay and find whales of either orcas or humpback whales kind of swimming in the distance. Um, there's bald eagles around that area. You go out, there's tons of different animal tracks. We were following the tracks of bears um, and deer. It's definitely like an area owned by the wildlife. Um, and I think we were anticipating the Bigfoot to be gullible, to be stupid, like, oh, they don't know what mankind is, so we can be tricky
Yeah.
and catch them on film and stuff like that. Um, well, they'll come right out and we'll do a Bigfoot call or wood knocks, and they'll be just, we'll get all these great audio clips of them. But then it dawned on us, like, not only do you have these dwellings that have been here and people have come and gone, but even when those logging operations were kind of active, like these things, yeah, you're in a wilderness now, but there was a time where these things would have had to live around, um, like humans in their daily lives. So if Bigfoot is passing generational knowledge, from one generation to the next, like they're not they're not totally um unexposed to humanity and
Right.
our human society, and they have had those populations have lived alongside people, um and that was a big thing that that we were discussing at the end of it. It was like we came up here thinking we'd get some dumb woodland creatures that don't know what we are, and
Hopefully trick him into getting
yeah,
responses. Yeah.
yeah, and the more we found out about that local history, we're like, oh dude, they've had over a century of exposure
Yep.
to humans up here.
So, I mean, it sounds like a wild area, and I guess before we actually move on, I'm sure some people will want to know. For me, I don't care even if it's my own stuff behind the scenes. I think people like to behind the scenes stuff or what goes on behind the camera. Let's talk about just real quickly. There was a part in the first episode of the Beyond the Trail. I'm forgetting the title of the episode, so forgive me. But you your kayak flipped. What was going on in your mind through that whole process? Like how what happened, and what did you do to get back in, and explain just explain what happened in the whole scenario.
So um that day we kind of had a free day, and Scott, kind of the owner of the property, he kind of recommended that somebody take the sea kayaks out for a little spin. And somewhere, I think we either missed his intentions, or instructions rather, or or we or just it never was really communicated, that we were supposed to stay in the cove, because you get out there outside of the cove, the water gets choppy, you've got wind effect and different things that are taking place that kind of make it harder to navigate. I'm a frequent recreational kayaker, but that's normally in rivers and different things. So you have, like, a couple different things to keep in mind, like when you're there, the wind might be blowing it. You might have a current to a river. Um, but the ocean's a different thing. And sea kayaks, for whatever reason, with tide waves and stuff like that, sea kayaks are really, really narrow. And so it's like it's almost you're in more turbulent water, and for whatever reason, you're in a less stable craft. I don't seem to understand the
The logic
nature,
there.
the logic of it. Yeah. And I think part of it was you have like some steering, you have a rudder that you can kind of steer a little bit. Mine was kind of, it got jammed up or something was wrong with it or something. And I didn't know how to use it, but I couldn't use it even if I did. And, but we were out there and, we were trying to get around the cove, to explore an adjacent cove that we thought maybe had some potential. And so all we were going to do is hug the coast and wrap around and then come back. It wasn't like we were taken out to the open ocean or anything. Um, but as we were going, like, I think Alex was getting a little bit stressed because he was getting like thrown kind of dangerously close to the land, and getting kind of smashed up against the rocks. So he was trying to balance, but then he was also getting pushed out, like pushed closer to the shore. I wanted to get away from that. Like I didn't want to be like smashed up against rocks. So like I went out wider, and so my whole logic was um to go out into open water a little bit and then pivot to a little beach where we could land and turn around. Like at that point we were like, okay, we can get right to the mouth of the adjacent cove and then kind of walk from there. We'll kind of park on this little beach here, this little sand pit that's like along the other side. Um, and between you had windswept waves, you had tidal waves, you had like waves bouncing back. So is you're getting different types of waves from different sources. And it was just kind of like it got to the point where everything was just choppy. And um, as I was trying to pivot towards that sand pit, like I was dipping hard to the left, and a kind of a rogue, unexpected wave hit me from the right, and I just tipped over. And my first logic was I fell into the water, and I it was cold. I knew it was cold. I knew these were hypothermic conditions. Like a lot of my wilderness survival kind of kicked in. Like these were things that I taught myself, and these are things that I've encountered, in long distance backpacking, and all my wilderness adventures. Right, like I knew I was in a bad way, and I knew that I was like in a race against time to reverse the symptoms of hypothermia. Um, but I wasn't really sure if I could even swim. So like I came up and like I was kind of in a panicky voice, just trying to shake off the initial shock. And I was calling out to Alex like, "Hey, I don't know if I can get to you, because you hear stories about riptide pulling people further out or keeping them under the surface of water and drowning them, like that wasn't happening to me, but I didn't know if the current was working for me or against me at that point, and I didn't know if I could swim to them, like to the shore. Um, and Alex did his best to come over, um, and he responded well, and like I think we ended up working together, and I was one of those. I knew that he was concerned about tipping, and the same thing that we were in these narrow crafts. He was equally as worried about him falling in, because then we're in real trouble. So I think I was able to calm down once we planned out what we were going to do. And for me, holding that kayak, holding him stable and making sure he didn't lean too far to the left or lean too far to the right was kind of like the job that I had given myself. Um, and then, like in terms of, I had a life jacket on and everything, but in terms of like, resting in the waves, like, I found a good system where I could hold on to the bow of my kayak and rest. And then try to keep Alex stable as he rode us to the beach. But yeah, it was one of those things, like, it could have been a lot worse, but we had a plan in place. Like, I had enough confidence in myself, like, okay, if Alex wasn't there, I still think I could have made it to shore. Um, I would have maybe had to leave the kayak behind, but I think I could have made it. Um, and and then the other thing too, like, that was like going through my mind, was if I had to, if nobody was coming to get us, like, we were fortunate that Scott and the other guys kind of came around in the boat to kind of pick us up. But we kind of knew that we could walk over the walk up the beach, over the ridge, and get back to the cabin. So if I needed to go on a run to generate more body heat, then those were things that, like, we both myself and Alex kind of discussed, like, you know so it wasn't like we it was a bad situation, but I wouldn't call it a near death experience. It could have quickly turned that way, if panic ensued. But it was good to be somewhat experienced in outdoor and survival situations, to have somebody else there as a support, and to have even more people there as a support. Like, it really shook out pretty nice, because everybody that took the initial trip to Alaska, they weren't a couple of um, total greenhorns. So I felt like it went well. It was definitely a little of excitement. I lost my fancy sunglasses and ruined my phone in the process, um, but yeah, I got back up to the cabin and put some dry clothes on and warmed up, and then a few hours later we were climbing up the mountain to do an overnight uh, camp out, in an area that was kind of spooky. So it didn't keep me down for a long time. It wasn't down for too long before we were back at it. So it was
It
cool.
just
It's cool.
that just goes to show you could be on these shoots and you know it looks like you're being safe, and we definitely are when we go out on these trips. But it just goes to show that anything can happen when you're out in the field. Um, Real quickly, I just gotta take a piss like a mother. Um, I'm just gonna mute this real quickly. 1 second. 1 second.
Ugh,
Oh,
just took.
that's the beauty of these pre-recorded things. You can do that.
Oh yeah, you can edit it.
Do you need to go pee or you get a drink or
No,
something?
no, I went pee before we started, and then I took more of a hit on the whiskey. What do you got? What is that?
Sip. Pabst Blue Ribbon whiskey. It tastes like freaking bad tequila.
Oh, well, see, I'm not big on this Old Smoky brand, but they've been trying hard. And I bought a couple of their things, and they're okay. It's nothing like it's not an alcohol where I drink it and go, yummy. But it's an alcohol where I'm like, hey, I didn't
Yummy
I,
Miami.
I didn't vomit and I get a pretty good buzz.
Okay, so moving on from that, we need to talk whiskey after this, but edit here. So after Alaska, let me restart that. So yeah, like you did the whole Alaska thing, and from what you're saying, like adventures are pretty cool up in Alaska. Even it's just I think it met your expectations, and like I was just saying a second ago, you could you anything can go really bad really quick, even if you prepare for it. But so after Alaska, you end up joining or meeting up with myself, um, Jonathan Easley, and Bluff Creek, because then I started my series, Sasquatch: A Search for Sabe. So you want to talk about like the experiences in Bluff Creek, and we'll kind of just move forward, or just go start with Bluff Creek, I guess for now. We'll see where we go.
Yeah. Man, I don't know. I'm loving Bluff Creek. I think I don't it's kind of become my new spot. Like I'm hitting it up. I'm going. It's never been close and convenient for me. Like in the Midwest in Wisconsin right now, it's still a 30-hour drive. It was the same distance, maybe a little bit further, um, when I was living in Tennessee. And the first time I went out there, I flew, and then it took me like 8 years just to get back. Um, but now, like after that trip in 2018, I came back in 2021, 2022, and hopefully 2023. Maybe I'm hoping I can get some type of natural conclusion. There's a world full of Bigfoot hotspots out there, and I'm wondering which new ones we'll discover next. Um, yeah, Bluff Creek is a really awesome area, and I think this past trip in July of 2022 kind of I had a lot of unfinished business from 2018 and 2021, and we got some answers, man. Like we uncovered a little bit more, got a little bit closer, and then not only did we get a little bit closer to the Bigfoot mystery, but we also just like something clicked amongst us as researchers, you know. Um I still, just, some of our endeavors in Laird Meadow and the ground that we covered in the greater Bluff Creek area. And myself, you, and Jonathan, uh, as kind of like this core trio was that was cool to have that kind of click, and that continued into Mount Hood, and then also later in Idaho. So I don't know, like it was cool to kind of have this assembly of like-minded people, kind of come together. And we also had some other people involved with those endeavors too. We had the Lindsays there, Terry and Stevie, and then we had Bart Catino and Kip, um was there, Damon Irons, like all these guys that we know and respect, like came out and helped us make our films, did interviews with us, but also just like got back out in the field, and we all like made some really cool um efforts, in my opinion, to look at Bluff Creek, which it's so common amongst researchers to like camp out at Bluff Creek because it's nice wilderness, and it's a legendary area, but not a lot of people have faith that things will happen there. and it was kind of cool to be part of that effort to encourage people to take a second look and then come out of there with hairs, with mysterious origin, and document tree breaks that we weren't entirely sure how they occurred, to have something that looked like bipedal footprints along the road that were a little bit beyond what we expect um, a human of normal stature to leave. Like, uh, I don't know, man. Like, it was cool. It was right there on the fringe. Um, and it had me asking, how close are we? How can we get closer? Um, and that's kind of why I'm excited about what's coming up in the future, because we have a pretty solid strategy to narrow that gap even more.
Yeah, and and I could be wrong, but in my personal opinion, I believe, like you said, the core group, you, me, and Jonathan, were kind of the main three guys that are really pushing for research again in Bluff Creek. Um, because a lot of the Bluff Creek Project guys, they're older in age, and unfortunately, in life, you only get older, you don't get younger. And
Right.
so now that we're kind of there, I think we're really pushing for more research in that area, more probably than your average visitor to Bluff Creek that wants to see the film site because they're enthusiasts. Because, like you said, it's kind of become our spot, especially for me. And I think we're doing due diligence in the area. We're trying to do justice to it. We're really putting boots on the ground out there, covering more areas to really see what's happening. And I think that's pretty cool in itself.
Um,
It,
go ahead.
and I forgot to say real quickly too. And it's like we were able to get Bart out there, and then Bart was able to get Kip out there, and then we're able to get these guys that haven't probably done this in a long time to do it. And so they're kind of getting back to their roots in a way. That's just how I felt.
I think that's the takeaway from that is there's a respect. We respect them and what they've contributed to the field. We care like what their ideas are. Um, we always weigh in on their opinions, and I feel like there was a miscommunication between other generations in the past. Um, and you hear about it. There's so much drama, like when you talk about the Four Horsemen, and how DeHinden and Krantz and John Green and uh Peter Byrne, they all kind of they clashed a little bit. They respected each other, but they clashed. But even just handing it off to the next upcoming group of dedicated researchers, um, they didn't like DeHinden. I remember was really salty about sharing the content. Like he felt like the generation just wanted the value of what he knew, but didn't
Wasn't
respect him,
It wasn't going to do
or
anything with that knowledge.
or they dismissed him entirely. So like the fact that they didn't care what he thought, but they kind of wanted something from him, like it was just kind of he tuned himself out, and maybe that's just how he internalized it. But there was a miscommunication regardless between the former generation and the upcoming generation. um and I think that you know there's still a passion, and we're, if anything, we're motivators. Like we're going out there and we're saying, hey, I think something's going on here. Let's get like let's get involved, let's dig deeper, let's find out what's actually happening. And that's motivating people who are maybe on the back burner a little bit to be like, yeah, yeah, let's, why not, let's get involved. And then we value their opinions and we learn from them. And I don't know, man. I hate to see people like stop coming out in the field. I want to see um 99-year-old researchers come out there and be at the camp.
Oh my God.
That's why I love people like I respect the hell out of Peter Byrne and Bob Gimlin. You know, like these guys aren't what we would deem young by today's standards, but um, they still get out there every now and then. And they still talk to the people who are out here more often, and I just like that. You know, like the work that we're doing. You know, I want to be able to keep people out of the Bigfoot retirement club. You know, and let's utilize those minds that have so much exposure, decades of exposure into this field. Let's keep them in the field because otherwise, if they're not there, somebody's gonna goof. Somebody's gonna piss off the one Sasquatch to come in the area in 10 years and not be able to get that audio recording or get that footprint find or something like that. Like everyone in this field from days past and days future, like they have their value, and being respectful and diplomatic and inclusive is important for the community.
Oh, for sure. And then, as far as the research in the Bluff Creek area, I've always said, personally, like, it's not as active. I mean, it's still active, but the activity has changed in a different way than what it was in the 50s and 60s. Do you think because it's such a popular area for Bigfooters that we kind of have to adapt our research methods in the field in that particular area versus a different area like Oregon or something like in Mount Hood?
Yes, yeah, I think so. I think you have to go beyond the best research efforts that have been made, in terms of choosing on a map where to be, and choosing in your camp how to behave. Like I think that you have to premeditate that, and it'd be interesting to know how deep the conversations went amongst the people involved with like the Slick expedition. Are they having the same conversations that we're having, or was it a very like general conversation of tracks are found here, tracks are found here, so let's just walk all around these roads right here,
Yeah,
um
I feel like it would be somewhat similar to that, because like you just said, tracks are found here, tracks are found there, so let's walk the roads. Like they were saying that to themselves, and we're 55 years later or something like that. We're like, hey, there was stuff that happened here last year. Let's go back here this year and see what happens. I mean, it could be very similar, but no, I get what you're saying. That makes a lot of sense, and I would love to know too what those conversations were like in depth.
yeah, I know that we talk a lot, like and maybe it's just me, maybe I'm one of the few people like that maybe you can consider it overthinking, but I'm looking at recent forest fires and things like that, and how that could put species on the move. I'm always looking at what's been going on in like the natural setting, and trying to methodically predict what the animal behavior will be. And sometimes it's just not possible to really hone it down into to one thing. But we do the trial and error of checking out different spots. And I'm sure if a fire ever broke out around Bluff Creek, and we came down to a decision of, well, should we look upstream or downstream from where the fire took place, you know like then it's just a process of being thorough and process of elimination. But I think, like, we have those conversations like that. um I feel like could be on par with what you would expect from like a wildlife biologist at times, like where are the available food sources. Like I've been here in the last 2 years I was here, there were a lot of salmon berries or blackberries. Like that would be at this time of year, that'd be a good food source.
And
But
I think to go along with that, I think that's the reason I mean, yeah, we like in the Sasquatch Search for Sabe Bluff Creek episode, you see us going to these different places, but our main objective at the end of it was Laird Meadow, and I think because of that is because the activity we had in 2001, and then when we went there in 2022, it was a lot wetter than it normally has been, and we were seeing fresh animal sign, and we're thinking,
mhm,
okay, we had activity here last year, 2021. This seems like really good habitat right now. So let's really kind of canvas this area throughout the week while we're here, while we're checking out these different areas.
yeah,
So, it's like you said, we gotta just see what works, see what doesn't, and then just kind of research these spots.
yeah. I think a lot can be said about taking a closer look at it. Like it's not just a matter of hearing knocks, or following up on a research area because it had footprints found there. Like it's why, like, I think strong researchers are asking what's the draw for an animal to come out here. um and so habitat potential is a huge part. Like there's entire jobs for people to go out and assess the habitat potential for certain species, and we're doing that. We're doing the work that you would expect biologists or um, certified um, individuals to have. Like we're doing the work that professionals are trained to do, and we might not be doing it to the same degree of professionalism, but we are going and assessing the potential of an area and saying, hey, there's available water, there's available food, and this is good habitat.
Right.
um
Right.
there are jobs, federal jobs to do that, like for people who are concerned about mountain lion numbers, or bears, bear populations in a certain region, like, and we're doing that for Bigfoot, to the best of our ability with the data that we have. But
Exactly.
it just goes to show you, like, I was thinking about this earlier. There's data, like in the same way when you walk out into a wilderness area, when you walk into a Bigfoot hotspot, when we get to an area around Bluff Creek or Laird Meadow, there is data everywhere in the same way that there is data on a computer when you're navigating certain files and stuff. And that data is going to give you an indicator of what's there, what's been there, what sustained itself there for a week, and what sustained itself there for 4 months. And just being able to analyze that data, like, what do you know about tracking, what do you know about just picking up on animal sign and seeing what's been around you, what do you know about diets of local species, like what's growing around there, what resources are there for animals to take advantage of, and what are the relationships between those animals and other species. And like there's so much information there if you know what you're looking at. And we've started to tap into what some of these areas could mean or could present to something like Bigfoot.
Right.
And I think that's why we get results when we spend a good amount of time in the field.
Yeah, because we're not lazy. I mean, sure, yeah, we joke around at camp and have fun, but when it gets down to it, we get right to work, and it's important to enjoy what you do so you don't get burnt out on it. But at the same time, you have to take it serious. And I think I think we pride ourselves on that, in my opinion. Um, and I think that's something we can be proud of, which I am for sure. But and so before we kind of close out this thing, I know this year we're planning something really big. I don't want to say exactly where we're going to be doing this event, this trip. It will be in the Bluff Creek region, but this will be involving a 4 to 5 day hike. Um, why don't you talk about that and what that means to you and the significance of that? And I can maybe mention something about it too.
Um, all I will say about it, because I don't, we're so far off from it. I don't. I want to make sure that we're the ones that get to live this idea, right? What I will say about it is, when you look at a map and you look where sightings come from, and you see a pattern start to emerge, it's weird to me that no one has had this idea before. Or I think people have had the idea, several people have had the idea. It's not an extremely easy undertaking, but I'm I'm surprised. Like, this is why, I'm curious about the conversations that people had in the past, like, the Roger Pattersons and the Bob Gimlins and um the Slick Expedition individuals. Like, I'm curious about what they were talking about, because it seems like this idea that we have should have been one of the earliest attempts, um and to kind of take it on is kind of, it's interesting. It's cool that we're setting our sights on this endeavor. um but it has to do with the maps and the association of where the sightings kind of originate from in that area. And I think that, in terms of a natural conclusion and getting to the bottom of um the Bluff Creek mystery, I think that this is one of the best ideas for for getting results, that I've heard for that region in a long time. Um, it's always a battle of wits, with whatever we're trying to prove is out there. And I'm excited. I'm just excited about what we're going to do this year, because I think that um, it could provide us with an edge to get something, so long as we remember to record with our audio and be ready.
Right.
um if we just go in there and drop the ball, and something happens and we're not ready for it, then that sucks. But um
And I would say just one my 2 cents on it. What I was going to say is, I mean, tell me what you think. I think I mentioned it privately in a group chat, but in my opinion, I would say this is the biggest endeavor in Bigfoot research history, and just in the Bluff Creek area itself. And since the late 50s, late 60s, because you think of like the P&W expedition with Tom Slick, they were kind of looking in the roads and everything where tracks were found, and then Roger filmed Patty on Bluff Creek. But outside that, I think people have done sections of what we're going to do, but nobody's done the whole thing that we're going to do it to the extent we're going to do it. And it's truly virgin territory what we're going to be doing. So I don't
Mhm.
know if you would agree that this is the biggest thing in the Bluff Creek region of Bigfoot research in the past 55 years or more.
I think in terms of like pushing the envelope, in terms of pushing past that boundary and venturing into a specific area, I think the level of intimacy with that wilderness is probably, I would say, one of the most intense. But I don't know, man. How long were Roger and Bob in the area? Just for the sheer time alone, I still think that their undertaking was huge. It was months, right? Like it,
Yeah, it was months.
yeah,
Even the P&W thing was month. The expedition was months
yeah.
too. I mean, yeah, it's gonna be interesting to see what happens. I know we're still plan. I mean, this I know it's gonna happen, but we're still in the planning stages of making sure it's all gonna work out in safety. Because again, to do this isn't just like, hey, let's grab some backpacks and go. There's a safety element. There's a lot of things to consider when it comes to this to make sure it's done right, done safely, and to increase our chances for activity.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most organized efforts for sure. Um, and we'll see that, like I don't know what exactly. Like I think Roger and Bob are just kind of free drifting around the area, and so the expedition was probably similar. They had base camps maybe around Laird, or not Laird, but Louse Camp and stuff. But um, we got our sights set on a specific area and a specific route, and I think that precision, the element of precision, um, might end up being one of the more yielding things, you know, or it might not be. You never know.
It could just be a total waste of 5 days.
Right, but
But
I don't know, man. I think we might be making a discovery of some kind. Not entirely sure what, but
dude, I really hope so. And if we can come out swinging like that, that'd be amazing. But well, Ron, I thank you for coming on last minute to do this. It's been a pleasure. Um, it's always fun talking to you.
yeah, I always like talking, so bye.
All right. Well, catch us next time on the Bluff Creek Project podcast. Take care.